Welcome to the Movement Disorder Journal and News Podcast. I'm its publisher, Chris Denny. My guest today lost his best friend on New Year's Day 2020. Her name was Sharon. She was his mother, and Parkinson's disease took her at 69 years old. What he did with that loss is why he's here today. Dr. George Ackerman, founder of TogetherForSharon and author of The Son's Journey from Parkinson's Disease Caregiver to Advocate, and his latest book, a children's book called, he's co-author of I Love You, Grandma Sharon, Broken Grandma's Day with Parkinson's Disease. Welcome.
Thanks. It's really an honor to spend time with you, and thanks too for all the work you're doing in the field.
Thank you. Well, I think anyone at this point who knows about Parkinson's disease has heard your story. It's a tragic one that has led to some amazing strides in awareness, advocacy, and support for people living with this disease. But I think what makes your story so powerful is that it's also just a story about a son and his mother. So let's start there. So for those who don't know, just kind of give us a brief history of how you got here.
Yeah, unfortunately, in a way it's unfortunate, but in another way it's actually inspiring for all the people I've met today and going forward. But my mother has and always will be my best friend. She was diagnosed, we think, for about 18 years. And unfortunately, the last 4 were when I even learned what Parkinson's was. And she battled as hard as she could. And she always used to say she's not going to, leave us because she wanted to be there for her grandkids' wedding. And unfortunately, it just took over. And it wasn't just the Parkinson's symptoms. It was all the other things that come also in addition due to the symptoms and the drugs. So it was a challenge. And I think, in a way, part of me passed, with her this world because never really been the same. Obviously, I still try to push forward. I advocate today for everybody still battling. Really, I don't get anything and I don't want anything, but I don't want people to have to go through what she did or their families to feel alone like we did. And even still advocating today, I still feel some days, unfortunately, it's just not easy for someone who lost a loved one.
So the article is a lot about caregiving, fundraising. Tell me at least your take on why you think fundraising is so critical to Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, the most important thing for fundraising is really to go, I feel, towards research. So right now, unfortunately, government's been last year cutting back and stopping funding for research. Well, if we don't fund research, we're not going to find a cure, and we're not even doing a lot of my podcasts too on Parkinson's awareness. We've been lucky to have some of the world's renowned doctors and scientists and people in the labs, and that's really again what inspires me. But if we don't have the funding to do the research, and the first goal really I've learned is to stop the progression of people battling today. Number 2 is to kind of reverse it so they didn't have it. And number 3 is then a cure. So the only way we're going to get to these areas through the work you're doing too, the news and keeping people posted out there, is through the fundraising, but really towards research.
Is there a moment from your caregiving experience that made you understand kind of on a gut level why fundraising for this disease is not optional?
I mean, it's not easy. I know I'm not the best fundraiser. Tried. I do more awareness just again to remember my mother, but unfortunately, when you're caregiving, you don't really think about any of that. That's not even important. The fun of any of that. When I was caregiving, I felt like when they throw someone into the wolves or the sharks, and just to try to survive each day. And unfortunately, caregiving is a whole nother show. But I went. I always say, if there's not a term, I'm going to coin it. I felt like I had secondary Parkinson because although I didn't have the symptoms, I held my mother's hand literally till her last breath through all stages. So, it's not easy for someone who, whether you love the person, not love them, if it's a friend, family, or neighbor, to watch someone, who is very able to exercise, to run, to live life, to live independently, and then after some reason progress so quickly seeing someone go from, walking a few miles to out of nowhere the last few years, a walker, wheelchair, and then bedbound the last 7 days of her life.
Let's say you describe caregiving as something you can't take a class for.
Yeah.
Uh, when did you realize just how unprepared you were?
Yeah, my career is I'm a police officer, lawyer, and I have a PhD in criminal justice. So I'm kind of a planner. I have checklists to try and check each area off. But we tried a checklist and everything went out the window because every time we wanted to help her with one thing, maybe it was a symptom or bringing her to a doctor, something else came up, whether she started now to have hallucination, delusions, and feared a lot of the people around her except for me. So it was always very tough struggle because, when you wanted to prioritize or help with one thing, whether it's just shopping, well, then you had to also go deal with hoping she doesn't fall. Then when you want to look at that, you have to worry about the medicines, and then it's not literally like I felt like I was kind of under a wall of rubble and couldn't get out or gasp for air. And again, I would do it all over again, but I break the rule where they say take care of your own health first as a caregiver and also as an advocate because I never knew that we were told by many doctors she wouldn't pass due to Parkinson's, and they were wrong. So I'm really grateful that I spent every minute with her, but I sacrificed a lot of my own health and life. And then even today I still do, even though she would have said don't advocate at all because she'd rather me spend time with my family and I can't bring her back. So, it's just I'm still grieving 6 years later every day.
What was the hardest point of caregiving that nobody warned you about?
Think again, kind of the chaos because there's just no planning. A lot of people are not aware still. People we spoke to aren't aware. Even the doctors. We went to 15, movement specialists, neurologists, and although they tried their best, they just couldn't, do things. They couldn't solve it. They couldn't reverse it. They couldn't cure it. And again, just watching someone you love and holding their hand and seeing them in a way sadly deteriorating, something that again haunts me every day. And I don't have many regrets because I don't blame the doctor or the medicine, it's the disease, but I just, wish I had a moment again with her. And, we spoke 100 times a day. So a part of me left when she did because now, I do look to this community, the Parkinson's community. I've been honored that I have so many incredible, new people that I've met that wouldn't have. I've interviewed 3,000 people, written 400 shows, and those are the reasons, and those are the people that why it drives me to keep doing this because they've now become people I care about, and I hate seeing them have to also struggle. But we'll also learn, unfortunately, the downsides to advocacy if we get to, but it's not an easy thing to do. We're working actually on a documentary that's coming out, and that was a tough thing because I had to relive it all. And then we had an inner self struggle with how much to show because we documented her last year of her life, and I don't think she wanted to be remembered for that. But then it's like, you want to show the world what it does so people who don't know. But
Right.
then you also want to scare people who are not, every journey is different. So again, what happened to my mother doesn't mean necessarily it will happen to someone else. So it's very interesting fine line. So we decided not to put a lot, but definitely to share a little. But that'll be out next year. That's really, I don't want to say the end, but one of the last puzzle pieces I've always dreamt of in this field and advocacy to share my mother's journey.
I'm a caregiver of sorts. My wife has essential tremor, and she's also elderly, so it's kind of a double whammy for me. While she's not as nearly as bad, her tremors are getting worse, but it's not nearly as bad as somebody with Parkinson's. But people don't tend to understand how much it takes out of you,
Mhm.
um, and that taking care of yourself is important because you can't take care of, you know, them if you don't help you, but you tend to try to want to worry more about them than yourself.
Mm. That sounds exactly how I was. A lot of the disease and the people diagnosed are similar, not similar, but the caregiver side is pretty similar.
So there's a story going around that you talked about that your mom was pulling furniture out of the house.
Yeah, it's a long story. Fast forward version is she had Parkinson's for about 14 years, and she didn't really, need much help. She had just a little bit of stiffness in her left arm, but she still lived alone. She still shopped, had friends, had a life. And then all of a sudden, she went for a trial, and I'm for trials, but I don't know what happened. And the same night she came home, I got a call to rush over to her home, and this never happened ever at 4 a.m. and I arrived and saw a figure like a person. I didn't know what it was outside of the front of my mother's house. As a cop, I approached her to make sure everything's okay. Found it was my mother, and I asked her what she's doing, and she said she thinks there's Nazis in her home and they're going to harm her. So I went in to make sure there was no one, and there wasn't. But unfortunately, when I went in her bedroom, something I never saw because I don't, I never go in her, I never went in her bedroom much. And around the whole room was little post-it notes. Like I actually have one, like the little post-it notes, and each note said a different name or an animal and who is alive and who is not actually there in reality. And that was the first night we ever heard of delusions and hallucinations, and rushed her to the hospital. They said we would save her life, but really that was the end of her. The last few years after was never the same, and that's
Yeah.
when we kind of went downward spiral. And we tried. There is not like literally in my 6 years after learning about all the things out, there's not one thing today we could have done differently. So it's kind of shocking, tragic, and frustrating that, 6 years later, obviously there are some beautiful things, biomarkers and things to help earlier treatment, but
Right.
still nothing today, in my view, would have, changed the outcome still. So it's kind of frustrating, not for me, but, for others. And that's why I say, one day I might wrap up and close shop, but then I still think about the people still battling. But one issue I do have, which I always talk about, this is not enough, in my opinion, for people who lost a loved one due to Parkinson's, if there's anything at all. A lot of people and organizations, again, I recommend them all, love them all, but they'll have a place for people battling, which is perfect. That's what's your priority. Number two should be people, obviously, like yourself, caring. But there's a third category, me, who there's really nothing in my experience, and these are all my views and opinions. But I've seen everything I've seen, been to everything I've been to, and there's just not enough for people who I haven't been found a support group even for someone like me, because I went to a support group years ago, but it was for people, caregivers right now, and I'm like, I'm not gonna tell them about what the horrible things that. So I never went back, and I've never been able to find one, and that's what really means why TogetherForSharon.com changed the world for us, because it's given us an outlet, a voice, and a place for people like me, but also welcomes everybody.
Well, I was say going through your site, you've done a lot of work really in a short amount of time. Uh,
Sometimes I think it's too much, but like I said, it's not. It's something in my stomach, I guess, that drives me to want to do stuff. And some days I'm sick over it, even my own health still, and I'm not even caring anymore. But there's nights I don't sleep wondering what the heck happened to my mother, or why, and what could have we done. But you can't do that because there's nothing now we can. So
well, it's funny how tragedy will drive someone, uh, you know, to do something unexpected. Um, and your organization is, I knew, was it just you and your family?
it's really
Uh,
just me. It's like people laugh because they'll meet me at events and they're like, who's right, who's to go this and that, but it's just me. I mean, I definitely have support, at least behind the scenes. Like we just did a few videos today. My wife did them, and she's amazing. But we also have a family. We have other things going on, work and life, and it's not my own health. Unfortunately, I've had 4 back surgeries, ankle surgery, shoulder surgery, and I'm young. But I might even be getting a spinal cord stimulator again. I tried it once. It didn't. It was because of the dog. Anyway, it didn't work. But even as we sit here, I tell everyone I have an ice pack 24/7 on because I struggle. And every show I do is not easy to even sit there, but I just kind of forget my own pain because I feel the pain that other people are facing when they're battling this disease. I don't really want them to. I really wish I would like to stop, to be honest. Like as of today, I like to wrap up now, but I can't because there's still people out there, and I think they need a voice. And it's not just the Parkinson's community. We have to reach people who aren't, and that's the hard. Like the Parkinson's community is incredible, and they're already aware. But what we need to get there's 2 million people probably battling and caregivers. I feel there's 30 million who lost somebody who aren't really advocating because they don't feel they have a place. But imagine the billions of other people in the country who just aren't aware. And I don't think it's not that they don't care, I just don't think they understand. So those are the people I wish, but I'm just one person and one voice and one son, and I wish I could reach, more. I haven't seen as much as the bigger organization. I wish the support, because I think they could have, helped a lot. But if it has to be on my own, I'm always done that my whole life, and I'm more than happy to always take the challenge and always in this fight, no matter what.
Well, and those reasons that you talked about for doing it are I think important when it comes to letting people know why why giving to these organizations or going out and fundraising for these organizations in some way really helps, because there are a lot of people who just who depend on that money because they can't do it themselves, or they have limited resources.
Yeah.
uh, and it's tough to try uh, to get along in life when your hand constantly shakes, or
Mhm.
something else is going on. So um, since you started the organization, has there been something that you have been kind of really proud of, um,
Yeah. Yeah, I
that
mean, out of some of the darkness has come positive thing, like the people I've met, the relationships, and the people today that I still hope we could obviously fight for, but I wish they didn't have to do this anymore. So the number one thing is there are people out there in organizations that do make me feel welcome. So those are the individuals I'm thankful and grateful for. It has to be a community effort. I don't think you can really do this alone, but there's a lot of nights still alone and still fighting on my own. So I am grateful for the relationships, the people, but also sad a little about it is very political, which is shocking. I didn't, I won't get into a lot of it but I left a career really in politics because I was too negative. Came to this community, I thought it would be nothing to do with that, but it is still
yeah.
political. And that's the one dark side that I'm shocked. And I write about it. I'm very honest. I have a blog. I call it Tackling Tough Topics. I talk about anything because I have nothing to hide and I don't really answer to anyone, which is a great feeling. So someone doesn't like anything, which I don't know why they wouldn't, which is trying to find a cure and voice awareness for Parkinson, but they don't have to follow me, and that's the greatest feeling. It's I think sometimes, unfortunately, if you're on another organization or under rules, you're stuck. You can't really say much, but that's not me. I'm gonna always be honest. And like I said, if it's my mother would have said, "Don't do any of this." She just would have said. So I know I hear her. She's saying, "Stay with your family. Don't." Because there's days, I'm putting in 24/7 doing this. Can't bring her back, and sometimes it's you don't see the light at the end. You want to cure, it's not here yet, so it's very frustrating many days, but like I said, I do it because I'm grieving still. And I feel even just through the show, and if we reach one person today, maybe we could change their life for the better. And that's all I want.
You went to Washington at the beginning of April.
Yeah, I went 2 times. Yeah. Mhm.
Now, tell me about that trip. Were the politicians very receptive, or how's that go?
I mean, for networking and for the event, it's a beautiful life. It's like an inspiring because the whole, country's there in one building. And I do think that it makes a great impact. But it depends on the state and the people. And I'm in Florida. I don't feel it's helped me personally. I've tried to actually ask a lot of these same people I've been in their office to just do a 3 to 4 minute show with us, and they've declined. So to me, the policy side, you have to keep going, you have to keep fighting. I just feel in Florida, it's not, there's other ways. I do a lot of things at home. I've had several politicians on my show because I've done my own work and, the due diligence at home. So I do recommend it. I'm full for it. I think it's incredible, and I'm honored to have been a part of it. But for me, again, the networking is the dream because you get to meet people too you've spoken to on social media that you never would meet. But the political world is very frustrating, and it's shocking to me that we're voting for people. I know I'm going to make a big statement the week we have whenever the next election. I don't care what party it is or what party I'm involved. I won't not vote or cast a ballot for some politician who won't give us 5 minutes to talk about awareness for a cure, because all the residents throughout the country are being affected by paraquat poisons and horrible chemicals, and all we need is a little time. So if those are the people elected and they won't give us the time,
Right.
we need to vote them out or find someone who does care. And I recommend, usually we leave shows and I just say thanks, goodbye, but everyone listening can make a big dent if they contact their states, because state level seems to be incredibly helpful. We have a show called Parkinson Policy Podcast, and we're noticing a huge support for state level politician. Incredible, but federal, just forget it. So that means everyone can really make an impact, and that's really important.
I was gonna say in Florida, there's probably more than your average amount of cases of Parkinson's disease.
I'm in South Florida. It's one of the highest in the country, and unfortunately, there's still not a big presence of help here or support. There are some great organizations, but it's just, and it might be because it's more elderly population than the young people. But I know I've tried to do a lot, and I don't see the youngsters or the younger population really out there here in this area. But it's not much for a politician to take a few minutes for this cause. And it's, things like environment, I believe, is why my mother had Park was diagnosed. The water we drink, the pesticides, the poisons they're spraying in the laundry. It's stuff in the food and I won't say the name, but the
Yeah.
shopping centers. It's like we can all come together collectively and make change. But if we don't come together, it's just going to continue on. It's not easy to, you can't just be organic. It's really expensive, but
Yeah.
just it's very interesting. I feel like we could do a lot more, but it's up to us, the people, to make it happen and tell your legislators you want it to happen. They just banned, which state, just yesterday or 2 days ago. My computer is down. The first state in the country has banned. Now it's gonna go, and has banned paraquat. That's like a huge, huge, huge
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. If as of right now, was it the Vermont
Yeah.
legislature has passed it, but the governor hasn't signed the bill yet.
Well, then we shouldn't celebrate it, but that's still a good. At least they're talking about it. Florida's not even talking about it.
Yeah.
We have
For
a
those,
we have a U.S. representative that did make a great, statement and passed a bill to allow people to sue, like for cancer, environment. But that's still not, specifically banning paraquat for Parkinson's.
um, what do you tell somebody? I'm sure you talk to a lot of people when you go out and do events, or just general talk about how to get people to understand how difficult and impactful Parkinson's disease is, because most, unless you're impacted directly, most people don't understand. They hear about it, but they don't get it. Um,
Yeah, I think it's impacting not just the person or the families, now it's the community. So I really think that, unfortunately, whether the mailman, someone down the block, or a school teacher, I've seen more and more diagnoses, and that's scary and tragic. If we do have about 1.2 million people today, they said that the statistics show in just 15 years it could be 20 million or 15 million. That's a huge jump. So believe me, if people aren't aware and not wanting to, they're going to be, coming to a theater or a community near them soon. So we really need, again, everybody's voice in this. And I really feel there's a big segment of the population we're missing, and that's the people like me who lost a lot. I don't see a lot of, you might see someone at a walk, but I don't see anyone, in my opinion, again, it's all my views and my advocacy in 6 years out there at the front lines, really, on social media, unless they actually have PD or they're currently a caregiver. I don't see. I mean, you take my book, Son's Journey. It's the only book I've ever seen, and I wish people would write in because they haven't in the last 4 years. I always challenge everyone, write me if you. I've never seen a son who lost their mother due to Parkinson's publish a book in the world. How is that possible? But it's true. So, and no one's contacted me. So please I would love, if I'm wrong, I'll say me and one other, or me and 10 or 50, but I've done the research, and that's kind of shocking in a world that there's always, so, one big epidemic I feel, and I've told everyone, but, I just kind of feel sometime shouting to myself with a megaphone, But you see, if you're on Facebook and these social media and the groups, every single day in a lot of the support groups, someone will literally post, "Sorry, I lost my loved one. Thank you and goodbye." And that's it. They're gone. And that's okay. You're allowed to, obviously. But why not, keep these 20 million people, and why not have a little segment of an organization or a division or a council or something, so we can keep all these incredible people who have experience, even though some of it's tragic like mine. I've turned it positive. It's not all just about negative. Obviously, I lost my mother, but I still try to be very positive and encouraging, because that's what and inspire others like they do to me. But there's nothing like that. So, and I wrote a book on that too, which we don't accept the money. Everything we get is donated 100%. We have receipts back to the community. So, it's hard. It's been 6 years. When I first started, I actually had people wonder, why am I doing this? Because I don't want money. I don't get anything, and I can't get anything because, again, my mother is no longer with us. So why keep fighting? But thankfully, after many years, people who do come to know me know why I'm doing this, and it's so others don't have to do the same thing or follow in our family's footsteps.
One last question. If you could find a way to talk to your mom, and today, if you could say one thing to her, what would you say?
I'm 6'2", 200 pounds in law enforcement, and I'm not as nice in the field, but even talking about her gets me fall apart. So I have to be careful. But I mean, the only regret I have is I wish we had this kind of technology like podcasts, because my dream would have been to have a podcast with my mother, but not about Parkinson, just about our life. Like I literally would have went back to her life and then talked about, I would have had so much video and kind of laughed with her still. So that's the one part of life that I regret. We have pictures, but we don't have a lot. We never took video because we never dreamt again that this would take her or that our family would face this. So I'm still kind of in shock. But I wish if she was next to me, I'd just say I love her, miss her. And, it was funny on Sunday morning, the whole family would gather. We would have these horrible fights and wars over what kind of food to order. Now looking back, I wish we still had that, because even though it was like not, not it was lame, I guess is the word, or not. It was just funny, but I miss those kind of times, and I also miss walking by my backyard now. And my mother loved to blow bubbles and color with her 3 grandkids, and today, not only is that not able to happen, it's hard for me to explain to my kids where their grandmother is. And we just visited her grave on Mother's Day, which was, a beautiful time because they were with me. But Together for Sharon is more than just a website or even just an advocacy. It's a way for my children to remember my mother. That's why we released the children's book, because I have trouble even today explaining, what happened to their grandmother. So that's the main thing I wish I could tell her. And I feel she does live on through your show, through our talk today, and also beyond. So that's why we got to keep fighting.
Very well said, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for joining me today. And best of luck with Together for Sharon. I hope it. You've done so much. I hope it keeps going.
Well, I really appreciate your time and friendship, and your audience means the world to me. So we send our love and support, and I hope it doesn't keep going, because I hope we find a cure, and then we'll leave it up there and remember my mother, but we wouldn't have to worry about anyone else having to battle this. So thank you also.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, sir. Thank you to my guest today, Dr. George Ackerman, for his continued advocacy and the work he does to help find a cure for Parkinson's in memory of his mother, Sharon. The music for this episode is titled Open Arms by Adam Drake and Tom Jenkins. You can find this and more at audionetworks.com. This podcast is produced by me, Chris Denny.